Hi, Alicia Drew here. I want to talk about some of the myths surrounding marriage. So, I've been with my husband for 32 years, and we've been married 27 of those years. And no one really gives you much advice except for a bunch of platitudes when you get married. It's like you hear love is all you need. Love is not all you need. Let me tell you, life is hard and love does not pay the bills. Love does not teach you how to communicate. Love does not help you get through the hard things that happen. Say you have fertility issues and can't have children, or you have pregnancy losses. You lose your parents early in life. There's just a multitude of things that can happen, chronic illnesses, that love is not going to be enough to get you through that. Okay. So that's one thing I definitely always like to tell people that's not true. And then another myth is that, like, especially from women, if he loved me, he would just know what to do or say, or basically he could read my mind. They can't read our minds. It doesn't matter. They could love you more than anything in the world. Men cannot read our minds. Now, I talk about this in my book that's coming out soon, but women seem kind of like they can read your mind because women's minds are wired the same. So, a couple of scenarios, when you're at home and say you have a newborn baby and you're like, oh my gosh, they're crying again, they need to be fed, or we need to get ready to go somewhere. Another woman is very likely to understand what steps that all entails and what it means, just from hearing them cry and knowing we're going somewhere. With a man, not so much. A man, you're going to have to tell them, okay, I need you to check their diaper, change them if they need it, make sure they have weather appropriate clothes on, wipe down their face. Let's get a snack for the road and a bottle for the road. Like, you're going to have to really get granular. And it's just because men's brains are not wired to be that specific. Men are more solution focused, which would maybe make you think that they would know how to fix this issue, but not so much when it comes to these types of problems. So that's why when you come home, or they come home, and you say, oh my gosh, my day was so rough, the kids wouldn't quit screaming, or I had this really horrible account at work that was just one headache after another, they want to fix it. But then you're not wanting the action that you wanted when you wanted help with the kids. You're just wanting them to listen so that you can vent and talk about things. And so that's why it seems like your women friends are vibing with you and can probably read your mind, but why can't my husband? Because their brains are wired different. So if you ever want to get a little bit more into this, sit around and observe men together. Just be quiet and see men in their element together doing their thing. And you'll see that they speak kind of their own separate language. And it's really interesting because there are, with women, it's, feelings and, thoughts, and this made me feel this way and this happened and I feel like this. But with men, it's going to be more light, and it's probably going to be a lot of movie or TV references, to be quite honest. And that is often how they will joke, how they will relate to each other, and how they will communicate with each other. Now, I've never really seen women do that to the extent that men do it. I mean, we might do it a little bit, but it's like literally a different language. And that's because our brains are so different, male versus female. One is not better, they're just different. And so to expect someone to read our mind is really setting us all up to fail. I am curious, what are some of the things that you were told about marriage? When you were being kind of wished off on, having a happy life? Was it like, don't go to bed angry? Or maybe it was, make sure it's someone that you want to wake up to every morning, or keep doing date nights. That's all good. And those things aren't wrong, but you need a lot more than that to sustain a marriage for a lifetime. And I have a program that walks you through all of that, how to communicate. Because are you really still communicating with your partner? Or are you kind of just talking, like kind of having business meetings? I mean, even some of my clients who are therapists, we've determined their date nights are really just actually a business meeting to talk about managing the kids and what's coming up with, the house and parents and all of that. And so, learning how to really have a meaningful communication with your partner where you feel like you're connecting, like you're learning new things. I love that my husband and I are both pretty big communicators, and I feel like we can still learn new things about each other because I use certain tools that help us kind of dig into talking about and questioning some like really broad range of things that just wouldn't normally come up in daily conversation. And I always bring those with us on our extended trips that we take with our fifth wheel, because sometimes, you're spending a lot of time together, and sometimes things get a little like, okay, now what do we talk about? So communication is huge. The next really big piece is acceptance. And people, a lot of times we struggle with accepting ourselves. Even really successful people often have imposter syndrome, and they secretly think like, oh my goodness, if other people knew who I really was, or, whatever about me, they wouldn't let me do this job. I see this in all fields at very high levels. This is a very human experience. And so really being able to accept ourselves, and then also accepting our partner, because, high achievers are often perfectionistic. And unfortunately, we probably judge ourselves the hardest. And then next would be our partner, because they're a bit of a reflection of us. And so do you accept yourself? Because you cannot receive love unless you accept and love yourself. Yeah, sit with that for a minute. And then also to really be able to accept your partner, because if you're always wanting to change them, and if you're always thinking, oh, it's going to get better when they XYZ, that's really not fair to either one of you. But we can learn to accept. And let me tell you, two of the hardest years of work in my life of acceptance of everything, not just myself or my partner, but like accepting everything, accepting what is, but also the most freeing as well, because we tend to believe we have a lot more control over things than we actually have. Really, it's mostly just a facade. I saw a YouTube video once that illustrated the things we think we have control over versus the things we have control over. And it freaked me out, but it also comforted me after I sat with it for a little bit. And it basically comes down to, we have the illusion we can control a lot of things, especially as high achievers. You're probably very, regimented, you have goals, you have lists, you're, hitting the marks. But honestly, there's a lot outside of our control. We can basically only somewhat even control what we eat, how we respond to a situation, and what clothes we wear. And we can't even control all of those things all of the time. Because if you're like me, you have a teenager in your house who eats things in the middle of the night that were there when you went to bed, and the next morning you wake up and you're like, oh, and now it's gone secretly in the night. So the next pillar we talk about is respect. And again, this is one of those that has to go both ways. So respecting yourself and respecting your partner. And sometimes, respect, I think, is something that we've lost the real true meaning of. And it does tie in with acceptance, but giving that person the respect, honor, attention, the accolades that they're due. And then the next pillar is intimacy. So there are several forms of intimacy that I teach in my program. And it's not that one is more important necessarily. I will say my personal top forms would be emotional intimacy and maybe intellectual intimacy. But there's also physical intimacy, which is just physical closeness. It could be sitting next to each other on the couch, holding hands in the cars, or sex. There is the emotional intimacy. To me, this is like the most deep and real, authentic intimacy. This is where you are just, you take off the masks and you're your real self and you're authentic and genuine, and you're both able to be that with each other. And to me, that's the most vulnerable one. And then intellectual intimacy, being able to bat around ideas together and talk about things, and not like have one person be right and one wrong, but just being curious about things. And so the neighbor dogs are now barking. I'm going to go inside. The next one is, so we did emotional, physical, intellectual, and spiritual intimacy. So that would be, whether it's your beliefs about life, nature, religion, God, any of that. And again, it comes down to respect, knowing that you might have a different idea on this, and that's okay. The next pillar in my program is nurturing. You have to nurture your relationship. So this is where people also get stuck. They think that, okay, married, check that mark, we did that. And now we should just be good. They don't realize that you have to continue to nurture that relationship, or it will wither and die, just like, flowers in your garden. And then finally, we have growth, that you want to grow together.